Hi, I'm Bertrand Maltaverne, calling from Austria. And in Austria, in Vienna, in nice Vienna, I'm currently working for a company called Pool for Tool. Pool for Tool is a solution provider for the procurement world, and I have different responsibilities over here. One of them is helping customers making the transition to node technology to procurement technology. I'm also supporting them sometimes on more, let's say, process and organizational topics. The second hat I have here is regarding marketing for the product. I've been doing that for the last a bit more than 2 years now. And before that, I spent a long time, and when I say a long time, I'm talking about almost 15 years on the procurement side. I was for 3 years a procurement officer myself for Schneider Electric. And then after being working in procurement myself, I moved to topics related to procurement technology for the same company. So along the 15 years, I've been doing the job, and I worked on the implementation of different technologies like e-sourcing, e-procurement within that procurement organization. Yeah, so regarding KPIs, because the talk today is about KPIs. I'm an engineer from my education is in engineering. So I'm really oriented on facts and taking decisions based on numbers and rational stuff. And that's the good thing with KPIs. There is a quote, and nobody knows exactly who said it first, but I will use it anyway without attributing it to someone because there are different people who said it. The quote is, "You cannot manage what you cannot measure," and I think it illustrates really good the benefit of having a KPIs. KPIs bringing facts, numbers, so that you make decisions and identify the trade-offs in your decision and then find a better option. But the thing is that there are somehow side effects to having KPIs in place. The side effects, which we will detail, I guess, later, are related to the way people will understand the KPI and will somehow how the KPI will impact what they do. And when I say what they do, is activities, actions, but also their behaviors. And this is where you have to be very, very cautious when you set up KPIs to put the right one in the terms of KPIs that foster whatever you want to reach or the direction you want to go to, but that you also avoid typical, let's say, pitfalls or drawbacks of some KPIs. So yes, KPIs could potentially introduce some perverse or side effects. It's because people will understand the KPI one way and will sometimes find ways to go around, or because the KPI has been poorly designed, it will not foster the right behaviors, the right actions, but actually go against what is expected. And there are a couple of, let's say, recent news from the last few days or weeks that happened in the procurement world that I want to use to illustrate what I'm meaning by that. There is one thing that I guess everybody in procurement knows. It's about savings, and savings is one of the key KPI, I would say, of anyone working in procurement. But there are a couple of stuff regarding savings that I want to talk about. And I will use another quote regarding KPIs that somehow introduce this side effects thing. And this goes like that. What gets measured gets done. So basically, whenever you define a KPI, most probably people will do activities and have the behaviors to get the KPIs right. So this is the first point I want to talk about regarding procurement. If your KPIs are about savings, then you don't have to be too much surprised that then the procurement people, whenever they talk to supplier, work with supplier, negotiate with suppliers, or even internally, just talk about savings. And then in return, this is no big surprise that procurement is seen as a cost-cutting function, and only a cost-cutting function, and not a function that could add value. Because value means more than savings. But what I want to say with this KPI is that if your KPIs are really looking at how much money you saved, then obviously the activities that will happen in the organization will be really, really around savings. And at the same time, if you want to position your procurement function as strategic, then there is something wrong, because your KPIs and what you expect at the end of the day, they don't go together. There are inconsistencies. One example I read, I think it's last week or a couple of days ago. I'm not sure it's because of the KPIs, but this is somehow what could happen. The company Boeing is putting huge pressure on suppliers regarding payment terms. I guess, and I've seen that also in the past, in my experience as a buyer, whenever a company needed to improve its, I don't know, cash flow or please shareholders or whatever, one of the immediate action they came up with is, oh, we have to change the payment terms so that we pay our suppliers later. And this is a clear illustration that a financial-based KPI, cash, whatever, drives an action, change payment terms with suppliers. Although, I mean, I guess we almost all know that changing payment terms will have an impact, but very, very, very limited in terms of cash. Maybe it will please the shareholders, maybe it would please the CFO, but I would say in terms of really cash impact, that will be really minimal. So this is one example of this logic, KPIs driving activities, and that is somehow inconsistent with where procurement should be. That is strategic, looking at value and things like that. The other example I want to take is also from a few weeks ago. It's the Volkswagen story. So long story short, Volkswagen faced huge disruptions because of a contract dispute with a key supplier, and at the end of the day, they had to shut down their production lines for, I guess, a couple of days. So no production, nothing, employees not able to work. I mean, huge consequences. And this is also something I want to link somehow to the topic of KPI, although I don't know exactly what happened in the background. But there is one thing here regarding the dependency, the high dependency that Volkswagen had from that supplier. As a buyer, I remember that one KPI we had was to reduce the number of suppliers we work with. And I'm sure many organizations have that kind of KPI. The logic being the less supplier you have, the more business you have with suppliers, so the more leverage you have. That's somehow the reason why such a KPI exists. But at the same time, it introduces a new risk, which is what Volkswagen, I guess, may have lived a few days ago, which is you increase your dependency from suppliers. So you could create situations where you're creating some kind of monopoly and you're totally dependent on supplier. So the KPI, reduce number of suppliers, because it would bring benefits in terms of leverage, et cetera, is introducing a problem into the equation. So that's why sometimes when I talk about KPI, I say that the problem is in the solution, is that the KPI should be beneficial, we introduce new problems. So you have to really think it through, I would say, beforehand. So the real question is, now if we want to change things, and this is part of this procurement revolution, what could we do? What should we do about it? And again, looking at KPIs and performance measurement, I think the first thing has nothing to do with KPIs. Actually, it has to do with why is procurement here in my organization, based on the company, the B2B, B2C, the why could be different. But without understanding the why, then most probably you will not find the right KPIs and the way to measure if you're actually delivering what you're supposed to deliver. So first and foremost, working on why is procurement there and what is expected from procurement. And once you have defined that, and that definition has to look at, we talked a lot about savings. Savings is one component of what I would describe as the whole value delivery and the whole, I mean, to take the title of a very good book on that topic, the value proposition of procurement. And based on this understanding, that is linked to the position of procurement between the outside and the inside. What kind of value I can deliver to my stakeholders internally, what kind of value I can deliver to to the suppliers, I can start to work on how will I measure if I'm actually doing what I'm supposed to do. And this is the KPI side of things. You have also to define the KPIs in terms of consistency with what you expect. And also, and this is where sometimes I think a lot of people and a lot of organizations don't look further, is try to think about the side effects. We have these stories with Boeing and Volkswagen and all that. I mean, almost each and every KPI could potentially have side effects. So this is a time where you have to think about it and try to put yourself in the shoes of the people who will do the activities that are supposed to deliver the value that the KPI will measure, and see if actually there is no workaround that they could use. One thing that you have to have in mind is that people are very creative in working around KPIs. I've seen stuff in my experience pretty crazy in terms of how creative people can be to still increment the KPI without doing what they are supposed to do. So it's really important to look at that. And obviously, looking at procurement overall, your full set of KPI will include savings. And we talked a lot about savings today because this is like bread and butter. But I think the challenge for the procurement organization who want to really grow and survive is to include non-saving related KPIs and really related to the value. Risk management, risk reduction, brand protection are very important for some companies. Innovation is also something that's supposedly very important for a lot of procurement organizations, although they don't measure and don't really work on it. So this is for me the key steps. Define your purpose and work with your colleagues from the different departments, work with the suppliers to understand why you exist, and then set up the right metrics. And before putting the metrics, let's say, into action, try to also think about collateral damages that they could introduce. And that's for me, these are the key steps or the key considerations to have in mind. And I think one key also element you have to add into this KPI design is a dimension that sometimes is missing in a lot of organizations, in a lot of approaches. It's about simplicity. There is an acronym, KISS, Keep It Simple, Stupid. And I don't remember when I heard it for the first time, but it stayed with me since then for different things. Keep it simple, stupid. Sometimes regarding KPIs, people will go through great lengths to define the KPIs and to calculate targets, etc., etc., etc. I still remember my former company spending years to define some KPIs, when sometimes something very simple will bring a lot of value. And the simplest thing I've ever seen in that direction was when I was working in an indirect organization. And while working with stakeholders, so HR, marketing, IT, they had set up business reviews. So depending on the function, could be once, twice a year. And the way to measure, let's say, the performance of procurement was to simply ask, how satisfied are you? And the satisfaction was measured with very simple 3 traffic lights: red when not satisfied, orange when yes, somehow, and green was, yeah, unsatisfied. That may look super simple or simplistic, but that's the value is that it's the start of a dialogue. Because I have a red, because I have an orange, I will ask you, but why? And then I will start to understand what matters to you, what matters to IT, what matters to marketing. And based on that, and based on the dialogue, you can refine your approach and refine maybe the next wave of KPIs. And I also work with suppliers. When you meet suppliers, just ask them, how satisfied are you with the way we work together? And that's part of the keeping it simple, stupid, because it's pretty simple, but it's pretty effective, and it's a way to go step by step in defining the right measurements. And that's for me very important, more than building something very complex that nobody will understand and probably will create side effects like the one we covered earlier.